Hello students, we are learning English grammar and the topic for today is restrictive and non-restrictive clauses. Let us look at this table first. Relative clauses are divided into two clauses, restrictive clauses and non-restrictive clauses. But as we have seen in the previous chapter, relative clauses are also called as adjective clauses. So relative clauses are adjective clauses and adjective clauses are a part of clauses. There are two more types, noun clauses and adverb clauses. So adjective clauses or relative clauses are divided into two more types, restrictive and non-restrictive. Let us look at restrictive first. So they give relevant information about the noun or pronoun they follow. Relevant information means information which is important for understanding the complete sentence. So restrictive clauses give us important information about the noun or the pronoun, but non-restrictive clauses give us extra information about the noun or the pronoun. Now this extra information is not important to understand the complete meaning of the sentence. So we can say that restrictive clauses give us important information which is important to understand the meaning of the sentence, but non-restrictive clauses give us some extra information which is not important to understand the meaning of the sentence. Let us look at the examples of restrictive clauses. The dog which has a bushy tail belongs to Rima. Now we are not talking about any other dog. We are talking about the dog which has a bushy tail. So here this part is important to identify the dog which belongs to Rima. So here this part is a restrictive clause. We found the books which we had misplaced. Now here we are not talking about any other books. We are talking about books which we had misplaced. So these words are important to understand the meaning of the sentence, so they are restrictive clause. This is the lady whose house was burgled yesterday. Whose house was burgled yesterday means some thieves had broken into her house and they had stolen some articles. So we are not talking about any other lady, but we are talking about the lady whose house was burgled. So here these words are important to understand the meaning of the sentence, so these words are restrictive clauses. Let us look at the examples of non-restrictive clauses. Meetu, who has long hair, is my classmate. Now who has long hair is an extra information about Meetu which is not important to understand the meaning of the sentence. If we don't consider this part and read the rest of the sentence, Meetu is my classmate, the sentence is perfectly fine. So this is some extra information. So it is a non-restrictive clause. Last month, my family and I visited Tokyo, which is the capital of Japan. Now here, which is the capital of Japan is some extra information about Tokyo which is not important for understanding the meaning of the sentence. So this part is a non-restrictive clause. Let us move ahead. Let us see what are the characteristics of restrictive or defining clauses. Now restrictive clauses are called as defining clauses and non-restrictive clauses are called as non-defining clauses. We do not use a comma to separate a restrictive clause from the main clause. Now as we have seen in the previous chapter, every sentence has two clauses. The first one is the main clause or the principal clause. The second one is the dependent clause or the subordinate clause. So generally these two clauses are separated by a comma. But in case of restrictive clauses, they are not separated by a comma. There is no comma between them. The restrictive clause is introduced by the relative pronouns who, whom, which, that or whose. We are supposed to remember these pronouns. But in some cases, who, which, that can be omitted. That means they can be removed in restrictive clauses when they are the objects. So whenever we are referring to objects with the help of these three pronouns, we can omit them, we can remove them. Let us look at the examples. The watch which I lost last week was gifted by my parents. Now here this clause starts with which. So which I lost last week. This is an example of restrictive clause. But here we are talking about the watch which was gifted by my parents. So look at the next sentence. The watch I lost last week was gifted by my parents. So here we have removed which from the first sentence. In the second sentence, there is no which, but still it makes complete sense. So, who, which, and that can be removed from sentences. Look at the next example. The shawl that my mother bought is beautiful. Now, here that my mother bought. This is the restrictive clause. Now look at the second sentence. The shawl my mother bought is beautiful. So we have omitted that. But still this sentence makes a complete sense. Let us move ahead. Now let us look at the characteristics of non-restrictive clauses. Non-restrictive clauses are also known as non-defining clauses. Let us read this example first. Reema, who is a good dancer, studies in Mumbai. So, who is a good dancer is a non-restrictive clause because this gives us some extra information. If this was not given, and now if we read the sentence, Reema studies in Mumbai, this sentence makes complete sense. So, this highlighted clause gives additional information about the noun Reema. It is not essential for the meaning of the sentence. Essential means important. It is therefore a non-restrictive or a non-defining clause. The non-restrictive clause is separated from the main clause by means of comma. So, as we have seen previously, restrictive clauses are not separated by commas, but non-restrictive clauses are separated by the means of commas. Non-restrictive clauses are introduced by the relative pronouns who, whom, which, whose. Now, these pronouns were also used to introduce restrictive clauses, and they are also used to introduce non-restrictive clauses. Then how do we know the difference? We will come to know the difference because of this comma and by looking at whether the information is extra information or important information. We do not use that in non-restrictive clauses. So in non-restrictive clauses that is not used, but that is used in restrictive clauses. This is another difference. Who, which cannot be omitted in restrictive clauses. Now this is the third difference. We have seen that in restrictive clauses we can omit that, who, which, but in non-restrictive clauses we cannot omit them. So there are four differences. The first one is there's a comma in non-restrictive clauses. The second one, that is not used in non-restrictive clauses, and we cannot omit who, which in non-restrictive clauses. And the most important information is non-restrictive clauses gives us some additional information which is not essential. So students, that's all for restrictive and non-restrictive clauses. Thank you. See you in the next video.